Welcome back to Lost Legacies. Today we're talking about Lost Season 1, Episode 13, Hearts and Minds. As always, I'm Matt.
And I'm Sam.
And this week, when Locke learns that Boone wants to share their secret with Shannon, Locke decides to teach him a lesson. Well, Sam, this got awkward.
Yeah. Pretty crappy lesson, and just pretty crappy all around. Not to say that I don't think this was a bad episode. I don't think Lost has had a bad episode as of yet. I thought this was good. I thought everything was very, well written, well acted. Well written is a stretch, but
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, because I have differing opinions then.
Oh, okay.
I was about to say I think this has been my favorite so far of our 13 episodes.
This is your favorite so far?
Mm-hmm. Now, let me preface this because on airing, my first watch, I really didn't care for it. I was never really a fan of Boone and Shannon, especially at the beginning. So I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But now this time, I don't know, man. I really liked it. I thought the episode is called Hearts and Mind, which I always kind of just wrote off. I'm like, oh, it's just like one of those. It just feels like a filler title. Like they couldn't come up with something good. So they call it Hearts and Minds. But then upon watching it this time, I could see like, no, that's really what this is about. This whole episode is about winning the hearts and minds of everyone around you. Like every single person's little story in this was about another person, someone else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Boone's is very Shannon centric. Locke is clearly trying to get Boone on his side. Everything with Kate and Son. It's just like everything. For some reason, I just happen to like this one a lot better this time around. And I think it also has to do with, it seems like a lot of stuff is, I don't know if paying off is the right word, but it's coming around. For one, this is episode 13. So we're now officially in the second half of the first season. And I feel like, I don't know, this episode was much quicker paced than a lot of them so far.
Yeah.
Also, what I found interesting was that it's a Boone-centric episode. So naturally, there's a lot of Shannon in it as well. But there's really, compared to the previous episodes, there's not that much Boone. Or there is, but we went good portions of time in this episode without seeing him for it being his episode. And I thought that was very interesting. Because I think we even talked about it at one point, but the flashbacks in this show can be like 15, 20 minutes. That's half your episode.
Yeah.
This one didn't feel like it.
Yeah, it really didn't. It's kind of weird to say that even though this is a Boone centric episode, I feel like his story and his struggle, even though it feels like it's the main portion of the episode, it also feels like it's treated a little bit more like the B side, like the B plot, where the A plot is about John.
Yes, even though John is it feels weird calling him John, even though Locke really isn't in this episode that much, just a couple of minutes here and there. But the things he's doing is what's kind of shaping like Boone's story and everything else, I guess, well, first let's just talk about this. Let's talk about this. We saw a few episodes back, Locke and Boone, while searching for Claire, they found something out in the jungle, a piece of metal buried. And that's it. We've seen them since, and we know they're doing something, but we haven't really seen them come back to this spot. So now we do. And it looks like they found like this little type of window thing. And Boone tells Shannon that they found a hatch, which is the first time we've called it the hatch.
The hatch.
And this is kind of what it's. I kind of forgot about it because it's just you and me doing this podcast. We watch one episode a week. I'm like, okay, whatever. But then I was really thinking about it and trying to remember back to 2004, or I guess 2005 at this point. It's like, holy crap, like the Hatch is one of those things that made Lost lost. Like everyone was talking about it. And I think for sure, me, who was in high school at the time, that was the first time I really saw a show where everyone was talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
The Hatch, what's in the Hatch? I didn't even have friends like in high school who were watching Lost, but the little bit of internet we had back then, it was all over it. You know, what's in the Hatch? What's in the Hatch? So it was I don't know, it's just kind of it was a very nostalgic for me, which might be one of the reasons why I dug this episode more this time around. I don't know. Yeah, so Locke ends up, of course, eventually we find out at the end that he drugged Boone to kind of I don't know. We've always said John's been very manipulative, and this is very much so. He knocks him out. He puts this weird peanut butter looking stuff on his wound, and Boone starts tripping out, having all these hallucinations. But we don't really know the hallucinations till the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did you think while you were watching this? Like, what was going through your head? Did you figure out right away what was happening to Boone, or no?
Like I kind of had a feeling just when we couldn't see Shannon and they were both like yelling at each other, and Shannon's just like, help me, you know, I'm tied up, and Boone's like, I'm tied up too, and then you hear the monster, and I was like, is this real? It just like it just felt very not real.
Even the way her voice was coming from like different directions.
Yeah,
that's what kind of started to give it away.
Yeah, and then but then once he like cut himself free and then like found her tied up, I was like, oh, okay, sure. You know, I thought it was going to be kind of like the episode of Jack's dad where like he just keeps showing up and it's supposed to lead Boone somewhere. But no, so having that, I was like, yeah, okay. And then I just kind of like bought it for the rest of the episode. And see, I guess I didn't really want to believe that Locke had to drug Boone because of everything else that's been happening on the island. You know, he didn't need to do that with Jack. He didn't need to do that with Charlie. So yeah, when Boone said that you drugged me, and Locke didn't even say for me, Locke didn't say anything. He didn't acknowledge that he drugged him. He just said that you had an experience. You were shown something. And so that's why I was just like, oh, okay. Yeah. That's just the island. That's just how it works for Boone, you know? I mean, I guess maybe he did actually, you know, drug him with, you know, weird.
That's interesting. I didn't even catch that. I just assumed that's what happened. Because and yeah, you're right. He never actually says that he did. However, he was making that paste long before Boone like even said he was going to tell Shannon.
That's true.
You know, so that's like true. Locke was already prepping. Okay, so what about at what point did you switch? Did you know, okay, like, yeah, this isn't real?
Oh, I didn't. Like, so I
it was until the end.
Yeah, I thought that initially. You know, I figured like, oh, I think this is fake because we can't see Shannon. She's tied up. That's a little convenient. Oh, the monster's coming. Boone, you got to get out. You know, you got to get out of there. And I was like, yeah, this is all fake. And then Boone gets out and he runs and he finds Shannon. And so at that point, I just accepted it like, oh, okay. All right, writers. That's fine. I get it. So yeah, so I was in it for the whole time. And then when Shannon showed up not dead at the end of the episode, I was like, oh.
Okay, so did you think writers. She died?
Yeah, totally.
Wow, okay.
100%. I was like, oh, wait, so I was just
So they got you.
They got me. I was about to check IMDb. I was just like, wait a second. I thought Maggie Grace was in this at least another season before anything happened. I almost went to IMDb, but I didn't. So
good call. That's cool, man. That's because that's what I was wondering when I was watching it. That's like kind of what was going through my head. Like, I wonder if Sam's actually like gonna like buy this, because this time around, I'm noticing like how they filmed it and all the little things they put in there. I'm like, oh yeah, this is pretty. This is a it's pretty trippy, and this is probably the most what's the word, fantastical episode of Lost so far. Like everything has been
Yeah.
hinting at things, the monster for sure, and we've heard it but we haven't seen it, and it hasn't really showed up since like those first few episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And in this episode, like things start to get nuts, but you could kind of write it off like, oh, it was a bad trip, it was a hallucination, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But especially back then, Lost is brand new, everyone's all hyped for it. This was really wild. Like, holy crap, what was that? I thought her off-screen death was badass, because all we see is we just see her legs running, and all of a sudden her legs are lifted off the ground. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
camera shakes, and like we see her head flip over where her feet were. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that was brilliant. That's terrifying.
That was terrifying.
Nobody's head should be there. I'm like, oh man, that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, once he finds her body, they did a fantastic makeup job, with just the blood and like like chunks and pieces of her. I'm like, wow, it was
Mm-hmm.
pretty graphic for
Mm-hmm.
2005 ABC.
I know, for like primetime 2005
Yeah.
ABC, like that was like I think what helped was that they didn't linger on any of it. We saw like
Mhm.
we saw like a pool of blood, and then like the camera starts to move and you see like, oh, there's the trail, but it's never lingering enough, to be like. And then yeah, when we see like the yeah, it looks kind of like chunks of something coming out of
Mhm.
Shannon, but we never get to see it. So it's like, okay, that's fine. That, I guess that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Um yeah,
Oh, that was epic. I loved it.
craziness.
Yeah.
And now, of course, Boone is now a disciple of Locke, I guess.
Oh, dude, I know, it's so like that whole final scene is so dark, man. And shout out to, I don't even know how you say his name, Ian Somerhalder.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, yeah, Ian Somerhalder. Um, because that last scene, man, where like he attacks Locke and he's just so emotional and he sees his sister's alive, and uh, he says like, I saw her die, and Locke asks him, how did that make you feel? And the way he responds, oh, it's so heartbreaking. But he said, relieved. I was like, oh, fuck. It's so twisted. It's so brilliant. I just, that right there, this episode really put me back in like the Boone and Shannon camp. Just because
Mm.
like they're not people I want to know in real life. But it's like it's like watching a car crash, Sam. I just can't look away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and this is also, I'm not saying that like they're bad guys or anything like that, but everyone on this island we've talked about, they're all messed up. They're all broken in some kind of way. But this was before the day and age of where like we were rooting for bad guys on TV. You know,
Mhm.
there's a little bit of it. But like as of this point, it was like Tony Soprano, and that was it. So just to see something like I'd never rooted for those two before, but like now, years later, I'm like, oh, this is so twisted. I love it. Very the same way you would, the same way you love like Macbeth. You know, it's just like these characters are so twisted. I love it. Or even Antigone. We'll get a little closer. You know, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
not Antigone.
Um
Uh,
what?
Oedipus.
Oedipus? Yeah.
Oedipus Rex. Even that, because like, yeah, this is terrifying, this is gross, this is messed up.
Yeah.
Damn, it's so well written. That's kind of like the vibe. Like, I'm not rooting for Boone and Shannon, but like I want to know more. And it's going to be interesting as the show goes on to see everything from Shannon's point of view, because this was
Mhm.
all from Boone's point of view.
Yeah.
So so let's talk about them for at least a second, because technically it was like their episode. They had the flashbacks. How'd you
Yeah.
feel about the flashbacks this time?
Um, it was interesting because I feel like they were so short.
Yeah.
They didn't take up a lot of time. Like we spent more time with like Kate and Son or Jin and Hurley. You know, we spent so much time outside. You know, even Michael gets like a small moment. You know, here where like I feel like any other episode has been like pure. Well, like the last episode was like Kate. It was like almost nonstop Kate. She's almost in every scene. You know, so that was interesting. Like the flashbacks were just so we already knew that they were both like privileged, like they come from money. But it's interesting to see that like, oh, okay, like Shannon didn't technically come from money.
Right.
And is this the first time they mentioned that they're step siblings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the whole twist. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. So okay, they like step siblings. Okay, it's interesting. And I guess, well, okay. Before I jump ahead, uh, yeah. So like the flashbacks were interesting. They're very concise and to the point. They very
Mhm.
much. It feels like at this point already, maybe the writers already knew. Like, okay, we already know who Boone is. You know, we already know
Yeah.
who Shannon is. So we don't really need to spend more time developing their character because this is who they are. This is the way their brain thinks. Like, okay, Shannon's in trouble. I'm gonna go help her. Like, okay, she's got like a douche boyfriend. Okay, I'm gonna go pay him off so that he leaves her alone. You know, stuff like that.
Do you know who that actor was? The boyfriend?
No,
That's the guy who plays the Beast on The Magicians.
really,
It's crazy, right?
huh?
Because I don't know. I mean,
He
if
did
you
seem familiar. I was like, that but not too familiar that like,
yeah,
oh, I really recognize you. Just like I feel like I've seen you somewhere.
because in
Yeah,
The Magician, he's I mean, okay, so what? The show is
he,
at least 10 years after this, at
yeah,
least.
yeah.
Um 2015ish, I guess. He's much smaller. I don't know. He just, I guess, looked older. He looked more of like a classically trained older actor. Even like his accent, the way he's very performancy,
Mhm.
very theatrical. I had no idea. So when I saw this, and I had to look him up, because in this, like, he's this big beefy dude. You know, he's very intimidating. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh crap, that's the same guy. His name is Charles Measure.
Okay.
Charles Measure, who plays Brian with a Y, by the way, in Lost.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
little
I
dude.
watched with the subtitles on, so yeah, I
Oh,
saw that.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was just an aside. I wanted to say that's so weird that that guy has hella range. Then I guess
Yeah, that's very interesting.
because he has those
Uh,
like piercing eyes that I recognize. Like, because that was one of the scary things about the Beast. It's just a terrifying performance he gives. So when I
yeah.
saw this guy in Lost, I'm like, there's something about those eyes, man.
Yeah.
It's just like they're
Hmm.
gonna burst into hundreds of moths and eat you alive.
Lost Magicians crossover?
Connection? No.
Oh. Yeah, it's that connection. Who knows? That should be a thing that we should do. It's like what else in pop culture connects to Lost in weird
Right.
ways. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of cool
Um.
because there's going to be a lot more, I guess, cameos or guest stars who like they weren't really big or popular at the time.
Mhm.
So there's going to be some familiar faces. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
Okay. Okay. Um. All right. Now we talked about that. Let me get to my problem. Let me get to the crux of the issue.
Okay, here we go.
Um. So cool. I thought it was an interesting story choice that they made Boone and Shannon step siblings. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, okay, that kind of explains a lot. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
Shannon kind of just got dumped on, you know, by Boone's mom,
Mm-hmm.
so she didn't really get any of the money from her dad's death, like all that stuff. I was like, okay, like I could see the strain in this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the writers have to go and pull that where it's just like, and you know I have to say, I should have seen this coming
Mm-hmm.
because in 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 the past episodes that we've had, the way they argue, it teeter tottered between bitter siblings
Mm-hmm.
and very bad boyfriend and girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And one, I guess if that was the plan all along, brilliant. Congratulations, writers, and congratulations, actors. You guys pulled it off, and you perfectly set it up there for everybody else to be like, I think there's something else going on with those siblings. You're right. They slept together and they're not blood related. So, but
Yeah.
so like cool, I guess pulling a fast one over us. I just I just failed to see. I failed to see the point of
Mm-hmm.
of of that of that aspect of their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I I do, is it a bold choice? Sure. Is it one that I agree with? No, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
That's was one of my problems with the Umbrella Academy, is that there is a step sibling relationship that they also happen to fall in love with each other, and I'm like, I know it was in the comic, but I also didn't like it there. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
there's this thing, and then of course now post Lost, we grew up in the Game of Thrones world, where a key portion of the storyline, a key relationship in there, was an incestuous sibling dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
and I
With more
don't know.
than one pair of siblings.
Yes, with more than one pair of
Mm-hmm.
siblings. So like it's just kind of. I guess it's just a preference thing for me that like that really took it out. That
Mm-hmm.
really took me out of the episode. Like, oh, okay. Like, I guess it can't just be enough that these two care about each other even though they're not blood related. Like you
Yeah.
can't have like that sibling that I don't know. I would feel weird if somebody wrote us into a story and we're then like, oh hey, by the way, you guys aren't siblings. And you do it. Like what? Whoa, hang on
Yeah.
now. Like I don't know. That just kind of.
The very like Sam Dean vibes in Supernatural. Like every
Yeah.
time they think that like they're dating, they're like, no,
Oh, yeah,
brothers.
dude. Yeah, just like I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not me. So when it came
It's
up in this, I was like, okay, I had to draw the line
see,
somewhere.
I knew that going in because we've talked about this before, and so I was really curious to see how you were going to take this episode. I think when done right, it can be. I said that wrong. When written properly, it can be done right. I don't know. Uh, you see, it's just so hard for me to say it because I mean that
Because
is
you don't really believe in it. You're
I
trying
don't
to
really believe in
justify
it.
it.
Oh God. Um,
Don't
the
justify.
whole stepbrother stepsister thing. You can't even call it romance at this point, but like that is a real thing, and that does happen. The problem is it's very maybe fetishized a bit, but it's definitely fantasized, if you want to call it that, on TV and in certain stories and stuff. Maybe it can be done properly. I don't know. I have yet to really see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Which is why I venture a question, a twofold question. Can it really be done properly? And should it be done?
Well, the question is more of should it be done? Because I mean, I think it's just like I'm really trying to pick and choose my words here because I don't want to say anything I regret later or whatever.
We're gonna pull
Um,
this up 10 years from now.
yeah, I know.
It'd be like, oh, Matthew Jimenez's canceled party.
Hmm. I don't want to put it on the same level, but you need to approach it and look at it the same way you would do anything else that's very I'll call it fragile. A fragile topic.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you're dealing with any type of abuse, does it have to be in your story? I don't know. It depends on your story. I'm not going to say no because then that's me telling you what you can't write. And I'm never going to do that. If you
Sure.
want to write a story about abuse of any form, okay, do your research, do it right, if it happened to you, then you'll have your own personal experience to put into it, and that should lend an air of realism to it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it should be the same thing in this. If this is the route you want to go to, you want to write about this relationship between two step siblings, do your research, make sure it's done right. And here's the thing, I really dug this and I really dug the twist, but I'm also like, one of my favorite books is like the love letters between the Fitzgeralds. It's just so beautifully dark and messed up and toxic. It's all toxic. Even Boone and Shannon, especially, that whole relationship is toxic. It's not about two siblings falling in love. It's about one manipulating the other. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Maybe it could have been done properly. I don't know. I think we'll have to see where it goes from here. If it even goes any further, we'll have to wait and see.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could have been handled better. That's for sure.
100%. Yeah.
But at the same time, the reasons I like this is because it was so twisted. And I don't know if that's exactly what they were aiming for. I'm really curious to know at what point they made this decision.
Mm-hmm.
How long have they known that they were just step siblings?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of it is just like, yeah, like you said, oh, very manipulating Shannon, very jealous Boone. That sums up the two of them for these past 13 episodes. If you're listening to this podcast, I really, really, really want to know people's opinions on this. Just because I think it's very touchy for a lot of people, and I kind of want to hear people's thoughts, and especially because this is one of those things I want to see. To me, it hit me the same way as it did when it first aired. I just kind of liked it more, maybe because I don't know, my sensibilities are darker now. I don't know, but like I want to see, like, okay, how well did this age?
Yeah.
Was like, I don't know if this was a more accepted thing back in 05. I kind of feel like everyone's just like, oh, cool, that's a twist. And then they kept going.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say this, though. Giacchino's score in that scene was like his best. It was very subtle. Like I had to go back and watch it again. And I'm like, oh. And I look for it. It's not on any of the Lost soundtracks.
Of
It's
course.
this really beautiful melodic descent into darkness. I kind of got like gothic romance vibes from the little tune.
Okay.
Right. Interesting. Well, I'm tired. I think that's it. Episode's over.
All right. Good night, everyone. Get lost.
Yeah. So this was Carlton Cuse joined the show like back in episode 8 or something like that. This was the first episode without J.J. Abrams. He left after the last one.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, to go do Mission Impossible 3 at the time.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And this was the first episode written by Carlton Cuse, who at this point he was a showrunner, as him and Damon Lindelof.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, I'm like, this is an interesting jumping on point for him.
Mm-hmm.
Because so far we've been very mixed about this episode. In my case, I don't think it's a thing. I think it's a very, very strong episode.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it has to do with the Boone and Shannon stuff on the island, not so much the flashbacks.
Yeah.
But then also everything else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I feel like everybody did something in this episode except for Claire. She's still kidnapped.
Yeah, that was so that was my thing. Like, we're not, let me just say this. We're not I feel like we're on the same page as far as the episode. I still think this was a great episode. I think it was, again, greatly written, greatly paced, greatly acted, with the exception of that twist for Boone and Shannon.
Right.
That was just my thing. But as a whole, yeah, I thought this episode was really good. And yeah, that's kind of what I mean too. When like this was such a Boone centric episode, and yet Boone also felt like he took a sideline, one, to sort of focus on not just John Locke himself, but like the influence that John has around the island, And then we also get to see like some people meet up and interact and have moments with each other that like like we didn't expect it. Like, everybody gets something interesting to do this episode.
Yeah, so one of the big ones is that Kate finds out Sun speaks English. Which well, first let's tease it a little bit because before that, Jack is very creepily watching Kate.
Yep.
Like big berries and stuff. I'm like, what the hell's going on, Jack? She's like, I see you. I wasn't hiding. All right, you're just being creepy then.
Yeah.
Jeez, Doc.
Yeah, you're just being weird.
So anyway, she shows that Sun has started building her own little garden of all this stuff, and Kate's been helping. All right, Jack's out of the picture. Just had to set that up. For some reason, Kate wants to talk to no one about anything of her past. So instead, she ends up speaking to the woman who doesn't understand English. She's talking to her about her life, and it's all lies. Like, so far, right? I'm trying to remember what she was saying.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily lies. It's just that it's half truths, because she tells Sun that she was on her way to Bali. She's like, and I thought I was gonna get to like traverse the island. I was looking forward to exploring the island.
I was backpacking.
Instead, for I don't know why, but I found myself on a plane to LA, and I was like, yeah, okay, sure. Like,
it's not really half truth.
I mean, it technically is, though, because
she was like, a fugitive on the run. That's one way of saying backpacking. So what did you do last summer?
Oh,
backpacking
through Australia.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Because I murdered the man I love, and the FBI was after me.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
I just thought that was funny. That's why she would talk to Sun, because Sun didn't understand English.
Yeah.
And she still wouldn't even be speaking like the full truth,
Yeah. Which is kind of interesting for Sun too, because it's like, I feel like she's sort of shown that like she can partially understand.
Pardon you.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know.
Man.
Yeah, it's a farty motorcycle.
I know. Some guy had the bean burrito for a late lunch. Okay. Let's take it back.
Welcome to Lost Legacies. This is Matt.
Son of a bitch. Yeah, so what's kind of interesting is that Sun has sort of shown that, to everybody else, that she can at least comprehend a little bit of English. Like that's part of her role, is that, like she's play acting that like, oh, I don't speak English, I don't know what you're saying. But when push comes to shove, she kind of like lets it slide a little bit, that she kind of understands what people are saying. She kind of understands what's going on. But yeah, it's just like in this moment where she smiles directly at something that Kate says, that's what gives her away. And I thought that was a nice touch, and I was like, I kind of wonder how that's gonna happen.
It was so subtle. It wasn't this big epic fluke. It's like, no, it's something so small, and that's what gave her away. Yeah, I agree. I thought that was awesome.
And then they get to, they get more of that moment a little bit later, where Kate's just asking like, why, like, who else knows? And Sun is like, oh, well, like Michael knows, but that's it. And then when Kate asks why she doesn't tell, well, I guess she doesn't ask why she doesn't tell Jen, but when Sun asks Kate not to tell her husband, she just says like, it's because I love him. Like, I can't tell him this because it's complicated, and I love him. And Kate's kind of confused by that, and then Sun just really drives home the point by saying, haven't you ever lied to a man that you loved? And Kate's just like, well, when you put it that way, yeah,
because then she murdered him.
Yeah, she lied. She probably lied for years and then murdered him.
So now two people know Sun's secret. It's growing, man. It's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, man. People are gonna start finding out.
Speaking of Kevin Bacon, let's talk about the heartthrob of the island, Hurley.
Oh man, poor Hurley. I felt bad for him this week.
I know. He's just going through so much, man.
Yeah, he's having some digestive issues.
Oh man, aren't we all?
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, like that. And again, I guess kudos to the writers for like including that in your script, because that was just something I didn't even think about,
Yeah.
Like, they've been so like not meticulous, but they've been like plotting out like, okay, like they're gonna run out of water by this episode, they're running out of food by this episode, they need to find shelter, they need to do all this stuff. So yeah, like it's interesting that we get this portion of the episode for Hurley is that like, hey, I'm having some digestive issues because I'm eating nothing but fruit. I kind of need something else, So that's just, and then he gets his own little kind of like side quest with Jin, which I loved. I love that. Honestly, I feel like that was my favorite part of the episode for me. Everything with Jin and Sun. So Jin and Hurley, sorry.
Yeah, I want them to get their own spinoff now. We got Walt and Sawyer, and now we'll get Jin and Hurley.
Jin and Hurley, attorneys at large.
So yeah, they reference something that happened in one of the early episodes where Jin offers Hurley like something to eat, and he turns him down. And then ever since then, apparently Jin hasn't offered Hurley any food. So this time Hurley's trying to get Jin to teach him how to fish, and it all goes horribly wrong. And he steps on like what was it?
He steps on a sea urchin.
A sea urchin. And Jin's helping him. He thinks it's poison. Hurley's solution is that Jin pees on his foot. I love it because he's like, Jin speaks no English at all, and he keeps pointing like his crotch. Boy, pee on my foot. Like, no. Awesome. That should have been the title of the episode instead of Hearts and Minds.
Pee on my foot. I don't know if you can get past the censors on that one.
I know. So after editing the Sun episode, I realized something we didn't talk about. Jin, Daniel Day Kim, he didn't speak Korean.
Really?
Yeah. So we've mentioned it several times. Yeonjin Kim, she read for Kate. They ended up liking her so much they wrote the character Sun for her. So there was no Sun, there was no Jin. So they wrote Sun, and they said, well, let's give Sun a husband. Okay, it's Jin. So they hired Daniel Day Kim, and he spoke no Korean. So he had to learn. I was like, that's kind of impressive because he doesn't talk much in this series, except for like their flashback episode. But it's like, damn, talk about that right there is an actor, Sam.
Yeah.
He didn't know Korean. He just acted like he did.
He needs to be in more stuff.
Yeah. I saw, what's it called? The Hellboy?
The one with David Harbour? Yeah.
Mixed feelings. Don't want to go into it too much, but Daniel Day Kim is in it. He plays I forgot the character's name, like the werewolf guy.
If I remember correctly, it's like a were-jaguar.
Yeah. I think the movie isn't as bad as everyone says.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind a sequel.
Okay.
But it's still not the original. You can't beat Del Toro and Ron Perlman.
Yep.
What was cool was they did try to bring a lot of like that old horror myth into it, but it's like they focused more on the heavy rock and the gore. I was like, cool, it's a rated R Hellboy, which I don't mind, of course, but I would rather you traded both those in for, I don't know, something more. Like, yeah, it could have been better.
Yeah.
Anyway, side quest over. Daniel Kim, he's good. He was also in Hawaii Five-0 for several years with Jorge Garcia, who plays Hurley.
Oh, that's right. Hey, they did get a spinoff.
Yeah, they did get a spinoff. And Grace Park, who was Boomer in Battlestar Galactica. Awesome, man. I never really got into Hawaii Five-0, but
neither did I.
I think Terry O'Quinn had like a reoccurring role as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that started almost right after. Well, okay, no, it wasn't after.
It
A
was
couple
after
of years
Lost.
went by after Lost,
Mm-hmm.
but it was all in Hawaii, so it's like nobody left. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of the crew stayed. Some of the cast stayed. They're like, yeah, we're gonna stay in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, good for them.
Good for them.
It's no secret to say, Jin does not pee on Hurley's foot.
He
That's
does
what all.
not.
Yeah, he does not. Very
He,
important.
he does
But
not.
they
How
survive. Hurley
they
survives.
they do survive. Hurley does survive. He
Mhm.
gains Jin's respect.
Yeah, and Jin brings him the fish at the end, the clean
Yeah.
fish. I was like,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right.
He cleans it and everything. I'm like, okay, you guys are cool. I
Yeah.
like you guys. What's interesting though is that Hurley, before all that, mentions to Jin that he thinks that he speaks English.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like Hurley thinks that Jin speaks English, and Jin is just kind of looking at him when he says that.
Mhm.
And then he tries to like goad him on, saying like, and he says like, yeah, there's a rumor that you actually do speak English.
Mhm.
And I don't know, just with the way this episode went, I kind of feel like maybe Jin does speak English.
That's interesting. I don't
Like,
know. I feel like that's a very rumor type thing, though. Like a lot of the clues are right, but the
mhm.
facts are wrong.
Yeah,
You know, it's like,
yeah,
oh
that's true.
yeah, no, he doesn't. His wife does.
Yeah, his wife.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I
Okay,
think
that's a good point.
that's very gossip and rumor style, which is mostly there's always those little truths in
Mhm,
those false stories. So
mhm.
I don't know.
That's true. That's true.
I think he would have. I think he would have said something after Hurley called his wife hot.
Maybe, but I don't know. Like Jin is also a man of discipline, you know? Maybe he's like,
That's true. He could be a super spy. He's like, I'm not going to break my cover no matter what.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly. Uh Two things really quick.
Mhm.
Jumping back to Boone's flashback when he's talking to the police in Sydney, we get a
Yeah,
surprise cameo from none other than our good old Southern boy Sawyer.
yeah, and that's kind of like our first official crossover here, because any other crossovers so far with the cast, they have all been either on the plane or at the airport. And even at the airport, no one has really like acknowledged each other or anything. It's just been in passing.
Mhm,
But this is the first time Boone probably wouldn't recognize Sawyer at all. But like he obviously heard him and saw them pull him away, you
mhm.
know. So that's like our first inter character crossover.
Mm, okay.
Mm-hmm. Because
That's
other
just
than that,
different.
what would you say other than that? You know?
Well, I still think we haven't gotten one yet.
Oh
Because,
well,
well, I guess to sort of make your point valid is that uh Sawyer coming in there sort of plays into the scene itself.
mhm,
Like Boone is obviously trying to talk to the police officer, trying to get him to go to Shannon's boyfriend's house, and but Boone doesn't have any evidence. He doesn't have
mhm,
any. He's just saying this, so it's just conjecture. And then out of that, Sawyer starts causing a ruckus, calls somebody Croc Hunter or something, saying like, "How come nobody wants to hear my side of the story?" And then he gets taken to the holding cells in the back, and then the officer says like, "See, if her friends were like that guy right there, then I would have probable cause. Then we would
mhm.
have a case." So that I guess I could make an argument that like as far because everything else, yeah, has been sort of just like, oh yeah, Jin obviously saw Jack argue with the person at the desk at the airport.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like stuff like that, you're like, yeah, okay, like so they've seen each other, but
Mhm,
or at least Jin saw Jack, but that was it. Um,
mhm.
so I guess yeah, you could make the case that this is the first time somebody
Well,
came into somebody else's flashback and played a role,
yeah.
even if it is small.
So we can say because for sure that's not the last time that's going to happen, but it'll the impact is going to vary. You know, there probably will be a lot more of those little crossovers that are just like, that was cool, and then others that like do play some kind of role. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that going forward. But yeah, for like for the most part, that's kind of what like the fans and stuff see as like the first real crossover. Because the thing too is that it's also a surprise.
Yeah.
You know, when Jin sees Jack, we're like, oh hey, that's Jack. But this one was like, is that Sawyer? Because even before we see him, you can hear the argument in the back. And you're like, wait, what?
Like, yeah, I was like, is there a point where this argument is so loud? And then like he shows up and we see his face. They even cut to a different angle of him and you see his face. I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. That was his only role in this whole episode. So that was his little contribution there. But yeah, so what was Jack doing this episode? I feel like he was just kind of moving around.
Jack was kind of just walking around. Like he just kind of starts off the episode and Hurley just goes up to him asking about his digestive stuff. And then again, we see Jack kind of walking around and we see Saeed following him.
Yeah.
And then again, Jack is walking around and he just happens upon Charlie. And then I'm just like, what the, like, I feel like the only time he actually set out to like do anything was when he sat down to talk with Locke. That was kind of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything else is just Jack kind of walking around.
This is kind of just like this whole episode is like a day in the life of Jack, you know,
day in the life
of the Doctor. Yeah. So forget that it's Boone's flashback. This is just kind of Jack going about his day. But I really like seeing stuff like this because it reinforces why they're following Jack.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen over and over why he doesn't want to be a leader. But it's little moments like this where we see like why he's actually a good leader. It's not just the big speeches and making the hard calls. It's like, no, because he's the Doctor. He's taking care of everyone, you know?
He's taking care of everyone. And he also, I feel like it's something that he also had to like learn, but he also cares about people.
Right.
You know, when he goes up to Charlie, he wants to know like what's going on with Charlie. You know, he gave him the aspirin so that because he's week 2 off of heroin. But yeah, he's also just wants to know like, hey, like where's your head at? Like how are you doing? You know, when he sees Kate at the beginning, it's a little creepy that he's just kind of standing there. But it's also kind of like, I kind of get it. We don't know how long this has been after the last episode. And the way they ended last episode was pretty rough. Kate manipulated him. Kate got him to do things that he didn't want to do. She didn't give him any information. And frankly, anything that she did give him, Jack just thinks it's a lie because Kate can't be truthful. So when we see them, I like to think that this is the first time they've seen and really talked to each other since that episode.
Yeah, it's been at least a couple of days because they bring it up when Charlie talks about his withdrawal, and it's something else. I don't remember what it was. But
Kate says that they've been on the island for 3 weeks.
3 weeks, but I think they also mentioned something like, Shannon mentions how long Claire's been gone, and I forgot like the amount of days they said.
Yeah,
but I like it's not like it's not a week later, but it is a couple of days for sure.
Yeah.
And then that's also the scene between Jack and Charlie where he's kind of we're kind of jumping. We always jump all over the place.
Yeah,
this episode.
we're all over the place.
But he's asking Charlie what his thoughts on Locke is before he goes to talk to Locke. But it's after. Let's talk about Locke for a second. Locke has a conversation with Saeed. Saeed's trying to map the island and read Rousseau's map when Locke approaches him, surprises Saeed. And Saeed is shocked too. He's like, I didn't hear you. This is the first time Locke has walked in who knows how long. So he's stealth. He's like Batman. I don't know, man. Like it was kind of creepy a little bit. But they had a really good talk, you know, and I liked it. And John said like how he was a Weebelo, you know, between the rank between Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. And, you know, he says, well, you know, we camp, we fish, we work on badges and all that stuff. And he gives Saeed his compass, saying that he no longer needs it. Awesome. That's a cool little scene. Until next time we see Saeed, he's going to talk to Jack. and he tells Jack the compass isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean, Sam? What's going on?
I don't know.
So that kind of what sparks Jack to go ask Charlie what he thinks of Locke and to go talk to Locke later. I think it's at this point it's safe to assume yes, Locke knew the compass wasn't working
Mm-hmm.
and he gave it to him anyway. Or this is a weird island, man. Maybe the compass is working fine, but it's the island that's off.
See, I was thinking about that too.
Mm-hmm.
With everything that's been going on, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can't get out a signal because there's already a signal being transmitted that's been
Right.
transmitted for what, like 16 years or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Polar
there's already that.
bears,
There's polar
cities,
bears.
ghost
There's
dads.
ghost ads. There's hatches in the middle of the
Mm-hmm.
forest. We know nothing about this island. So the fact that a compass can be off by more than a couple of degrees, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't surprise me. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like there is something else there that could be messing up that
Right.
stuff. So
So regardless, though, Locke gave it to Saeed knowing that it's not really working or pointing right direction, whatever. But he gave it and didn't say anything.
mhm,
Um, but it's also interesting too because it's like Locke is preparing for something. Every time he's talking to Boone about it and about telling Shannon, he's like, no one else is going to understand. That's why we're not telling people.
mhm.
But he says, oh, because Boone like confronts Saeed, don't talk to my sister, you know, chest puffing and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. Locke says we need Saeed on our side. He's a good ally to have. What the hell? He's
Mm.
starting his own civil war. Like, what's going on?
Mhm.
There's so many things tied to John Locke so far. I can't wait to see what happens. Like everyone got to do something this week.
Mhm.
Or at least had a good little moment. The one that we didn't talk about was Walt. Well, Walt didn't do too much, but Michael found his stuff, found his
Mhm.
bag. She thought, okay, that's cool, good for him. But he opens a box and we don't see what's in it, but he kind of just like stares into it for a while.
He gets a little emotional, and then
Yeah.
when Walt comes with Vincent, he kind of like tries to put the box away really quickly, and then he just kind of like looks at his son and his dog just kind of playing with each other, and then that's when Hurley is just like, "Oh, hey, you found your bag. Good for you."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So even that, like, that's such a nice moment. I'm very excited. I want Michael's story. Michael, give
I
me your
know.
story.
I
Let
know.
me into your life.
Let's see here. I guess let's just jump into MVPs, man. This is kind of a weird one to do MVPs for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. What do you think? You got thoughts here?
Yeah. Yeah, I do have thoughts. It is very weird. Again, Boone technically is the center focus of the episode, but everybody else sort of gets to do other things.
Right.
Um, Not to say that Boone's stuff isn't as important or as dynamic, but I liked a lot of what everybody else was doing this
Mm-hmm.
episode. And I don't know, it might be weird, but given how like dire the whole situation was, anytime Hurley was on screen, I I was just eating it up, and I love Hurley so much, and I think I gotta give my MVP of the week to Hurley.
Wow. Okay. I think it's cool too to have that little bit of lightheartedness, in those moments, especially in an episode that's like this dark. Well, geez, man, I don't know. God, now
I got you. I stumped you again.
yeah. I thought you were gonna say like Ian Somerhalder, and I said sure, Maggie Grace, right? Not why not? But oh geez, I think I'm going to give it to the director,
Okay.
Rod Rod Holcomb.
Okay.
He only did two shows of Lost. Kind of curious what else he's done. But the reason I want to give it to him is because a lot of the things that really worked for me it wasn't just it wasn't really the actors. They did good jobs, but it was really the little story beats and how they played off, like how they paid off. I love the way the controversial scene, Sam, the hotel room scene. I loved how it was shot. I loved the beats, the music. We already talked about Giacchino scoring that scene.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Shannon's body, like the detail. You saw just enough to hit home. And of course, I love the way the creature, whatever it was, like picked her up, lifted her, twirled her. I was like, all right, that's cool. So it's those technical aspects. I'm like, I'm gonna give it to the director for this one. And he's
Mm-hmm.
done a lot. I'm looking at his IMDb right now, but it's a lot of just like one episodes of this show, one episode of that
Mm-hmm.
show.
I mean, that sometimes that's people's career. He's a working director.
Mm-hmm.
And
He
I
had some
think,
really good ideas.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's interesting. Yeah, I will say that I think the direction in this episode um, was really good. Just
Mm-hmm.
just how certain like scenes were framed and how like the moment there was a momentum in this episode that even when we got to the smaller moments, it never felt like that momentum was broken up
Yeah,
or it was being like taken away from. It's like we got these certain moments interspliced between like this sort of drastic story,
yeah.
and I feel like it fit for me.
And I think actually, don't quote me on this, but do my
Go ahead.
research. I think it was this episode, but they were saying like they had to actually add one or two little scenes more because it was too short.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which is interesting because this was, I felt like a lot happened, and this, I felt like this was kind of like a West Wing, like Downton Abbey type of episode where it's just like not a lot can physically be happening, but the scenes, man, they're just flowing. They're flowing. All they're doing is talking, walking and talking,
Mm-hmm.
sitting and talking, drinking tea and talking,
Mm-hmm.
walking to the post, talking. That's all Downton Abbey is. But so much happens just in these dialogue scenes. And like in Downton is a good example. You can have a really cool, dramatic moment between two characters, and it's less than 60 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Cut, next scene. What? I feel like this is kind of like Downton was just a thought at this point, but maybe this is kind of like inspired by West Wing or something. How it's that fast paced
Yeah.
dialogue stuff or fast paced scenes. That's what I felt like really made this episode what it was, because it could have been boring, it could have been slow, could have just been a lot of that's cool moment, but like I really liked how it fit together. The puzzle pieces connected, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what the director's supposed to do. So I will say this last kind of thought on this episode, and we can go. Um, I didn't really think about it until we were already past their Boone and Shannon part, but I one of the things I really liked about the twist of them hooking up and them being step siblings
Mm-hmm.
is we've mentioned it before. Shannon's the one who, quote unquote, has always been portrayed as the useless one.
Mm-hmm.
But then we've seen how no, she manipulates those around her. She gets what she wants, all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And I think this really shows that like to the max,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what that whole scene was. Like Boone is in love, man, and Shannon uses that. She weaponizes that against him. It's beautifully twisted. That's the whole thing I was thinking during that scene. I was like, okay, awesome. And then we don't cut to commercial, it just cuts to black. And who knows? It's not the next morning, it's still dark. Who knows if it's an hour later or 2 minutes and 15 seconds later? I don't know. But it's like back to business.
Mm-hmm.
She's telling them what they're going to do. And he's even like kind of questioning it too, but he's like defeated at that point.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the whole, like the old theater saying I would always hear, everything, Sam, is about sex, except sex.
Which is about power.
There you go. There you go. And like, yeah, that's who Shannon is, especially in that moment. I was like, oh God, she's just twisting the knife in and like controlling him now. And who knows, this was probably the day before the crash. And I think that's what makes it kind of weird, because we haven't really, it was such a shock and surprise to see this. I kind of want to see not more of this in exactly, but I want to see how this transitions over. Like, how does that relationship continue for better or worse now that they're on the island?
Right.
It kind of just seems like, oh, we're just not talking about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see what happens. But next week, we're talking about season 1, episode 14, Special, in which Michael's growing distrust in Locke begins to drive a wedge between his relationship with Walt. So you're saying you want more Michael, you're going to get it.
Maybe is this going to be like a be careful what I wish for sort of thing?
Maybe. Because I have some thoughts on this episode. But again, I haven't seen it in over 10 years. So we'll see how that changes.
That's true.
So yeah, everyone wants to hit us up on the social medias. I'm at _Matt Jimenez on the Twitter. Sam, where you at?
I am at Twitter and Instagram at Real. That's REEL Texas Weirdo.
Cool. And remember, if you got any questions, just find us on social media or send your questions to #AskSamandMatt, and we will try to get to them as soon as possible. So yeah, cool. I guess that's it, Sam. Until next time, pee on my foot.